Okay, it's 7:01. I'll call this meeting of the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission to order. Could we have a roll call?
Bill Brown.
Here.
Annie Adams. Here. Leonardo Covis. Here. Kara Dudek. Here. Cynthia Hoyle. Present. Audrey Ishii. Here. Susan Jones.
Here.
Jeff Marino.
Here.
Craig Schunkweiler.
Here.
Nancy Westcott. Here. We have a quorum present.
Okay. And then Morgan, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us why you're here?
Sure. So my name's Morgan White. I'm the Associate Director of Facilities and Services at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Can you
for
push your
sustainability. Oh, it is on.
It's on.
Is that better? So again, my name is Morgan White. I'm an Associate Director at Facilities and Services on campus. And I am here, I guess officially I'm here as proxy for Lily Wilcock, who was the university's representative, but she's left campus and now works for the city of Urbana.
Yay.
And so I am here in a non-voting capacity today, and then we'll get a permanent university rep replacement before next meeting, hopefully.
Great. Thank you very much. So we can recognize you as a substitute tonight, but you won't have voting privileges until it's official.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I won't vote then.
thanks. Yeah, we don't vote on much, but in case we do.
But
just-
everyone who can vote should definitely register now.
Good. Okay. I bike, I vote. So we have a quorum. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Okay. Do we need a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda's approved. Minutes from the previous meetings, did everyone get a chance to look at those? Any corrections? Okay, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
I had some wording
okay.
changes, but none of them were consequential in terms of actions. And I sent those to Barb late this afternoon. Unless you all want me to go through them, I think they can be made without our review.
Okay. Just wording. Does anybody want Cynthia to go through those, or just read them online
Do you
later?
mean correcting the wording to what was actually said?
Things that I said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll appear in the official minutes online. And-
Okay.
Okay, it's moved by Sue and seconded by Leo to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. The minutes are approved. Public input. Anyone out there want to address the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission today? Yep, come on up. Just let us know your name and what you want to talk about.
Hello, my name is Jesse Thomas, and I live in Urbana, and I'm a student at the university. I just want to make a comment, I guess some feedback. Mostly deals with Urbana Public Works, but it has a lot to do with bicycling too. I live on Poplar Street, like I said, and last year I walked out my front door and it looked like to me that my street had turned into a gravel road. And I was like, what the heck? This is not good for biking. So you guys are probably aware of the chip and oil, that they're doing all across different places in Urbana. And it made it really difficult to bike for a little while, and I was really annoyed with it. And I actually talked to Public Works a couple times about it. They assured me that after a while it would get packed down and whatnot. And so I said, okay. It seems like now it is getting packed down, and I just kind of wanted to give props to the Public Works for doing that. There are still some of the more recent areas. I'm thinking more of like Oregon Street. It's has only recently been kind of cleaned up, but I guess I encourage Public Works to keep sweeping up, because that makes a big difference for bikers, because as we know, we're often kind of on the side of the road and a lot of the gravel's stuck there. So I don't know if you guys talk with them about that, but I appreciate passing any word of encouragement about sweeping, and that's my comment.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks a lot. I know one of our street sweepers was out of order for a while.
I think it must be fixed.
And are they both working now? Okay.
Because some of the streets I mentioned at the last meeting that still had a lot of gravel on them were cleared recently, so I suspected that the street sweeper had been out working. But if you see a street that still has much gravel on it, or that you have concerns about, you should let Public Works know.
Yeah, it does take a while for that to get worked in. I know when they tried it out on Broadway there by Crystal Lake Park for the first few months, whenever I drove my car down there, I kept trying to get over where it was still not packed down so I could pack it down some more. But it takes a while, but it turns out pretty nice once it gets packed down. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
My name's Craig Schunkweiler. I was the gentleman that you talked to. I'm glad that it worked out. I thought there for a minute you were not going to say good things, but
Call back and say thank you. So.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. Sometimes things don't work out, but I'm glad they did. So.
Great. All right. Thanks. I also wanted to mention some public input we had at City Council. Actually, it's Committee of the Whole week before this week. It's about a little over a week ago. About bike share parking and how people are leaving the bike shares in places where they really shouldn't be, or where people aren't sure where they should be, and there's some confusion still about what's legal and what isn't. This gentleman was from South Central Urbana, kind of either South Anderson or along that area. There was a bus stop along there that seemed to have some bikes there for a while. And he didn't realize that you could park the bike shares in the street, any place where it's legal to park cars overnight and free to park cars overnight. So I think that helped, but it is going to be kind of a learning process, I think. And Kevin is working on a FAQ, I think, to make it a little bit clearer. Do you want to say anything about that, Kevin?
I will note that it is not legal to park the bikes in the street in front of a bus stop.
Good point.
And you also cannot park a car in a bus stop either.
Yes. Yeah, so I did write up an FAQ that went to IT today, so they're going to post that on the website, hopefully tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Yep.
I did have a suggestion from somebody, too, that if we could talk the bike share companies into making a graphic that's easily understood by international students and everything, and actually pasting it in the bottom of the basket where they have to look at it when they park their bike just about, or while they're riding or whatever. They're going to see, a couple places where they shouldn't and should park their bikes, especially avoiding wheelchair ramps and driveway entrances and stuff like that.
I will make note of that, and we can talk to them about it.
Okay.
Most bike share, when I've used them, that's what they have. They'll have little graphics on the front. That'll sort of give you a few quick instructions about something.
Great. Any other public input? Anyone else out there? Jeff, come on. Don't want to talk? No? All right. Okay, so next is unfinished business. We had a follow-up for the selected crash intersection locations report. Did anybody want to present that or talk about it? Did you have anything
I can talk
prepared?
unless you want to go ahead. I mean, we're just going to summarize what's in this
Okay.
document. So it's up
Yeah,
to
you could talk.
Okay. So
Yeah.
RPC was here, last meeting, and they had some. You folks all had some questions. Just going through the document that was handed out, there were some questions like about the intersections in Urbana with a high number of bicyclists versus vehicle crashes. It looks like University and McCullough had 3 bicycle crashes, and Lincoln and Clark had 3 bicycle crashes. On the next sheet, what were the intersections in Urbana with a high number of pedestrian versus vehicle crashes? There were 3 locations that were identified. University Avenue and McCullough, again, that's the same as the previous with bikes. Lincoln in Illinois with 3 pedestrian crashes, and then Florida Avenue and Philo with 4 pedestrian crashes. Another question was, what does other represent in the pedestrian and bicyclist prior crash action pie charts? She's saying they were either unknown, none, or other coded in the crash data. Then another question was crash distribution at the intersection of Race and Main. In summary, it looks like in 2011 there were at least 4 turning crashes with 1A, which is an incapacitating injury, and 1B, non-incapacitating injury. And then in 2012, 3 other turning with C reported not evident crashes, and then a few other angle and bicycle and rear end crashes. There were no fatal crashes at that intersection. And then all 3 crashes in 2015 are property damage type crashes, for a total in that period of time from 2011 to 2015 of 13 total crashes. At Broadway in Maine, what was the crash distribution? And again, it looks like in this case there was a few spots of turning, 1 pedestrian where there was a non-capacitating injury, 3 turning crashes where one of those was an incapacitating injury, 1 other object, for a total of 8, and there were no fatal crashes. And on the bottom of that sheet is the KABCO scale, which is common with all crashes, indicating the severity of crashes. Then we had, do we have information on what the vehicle was doing at the time of the crash? Looks like a variety of things, but overwhelmingly it looks like straight ahead, turning left, or unknown other were the predominant movements. Some turning rights, though, that occurred, and then a lot of other minor, when I say minor, I'm talking about 1 or 2 crashes where there were a litany of things from backing to turning left or turning on red, things like that. And then one question was, what is the bicycle commute rate in Urbana? The CCRPC regional dashboard compiles 5-year ACS estimates, and the range in 2012 to 2016, the commute rate is 6.7%. And then they give some websites with some sources there of the information.
That's great, thanks. Cynthia, did you have a comment?
Yes, on the crashes, the 43 crashes that were straight ahead, does that mean that they were hit from behind, or, you know, that is...
That's a good question. Usually when they're hit from behind, there's a rear end is indicated.
Okay.
It may be that they were just traveling straight ahead and struck something. I don't know the particulars on that. It does seem odd. And then there's a high predominance of unknown other also.
Right, yeah, well, 24 of those crashes were pedestrians, so it's,
Right.
yeah, it's hard to know where the bicyclist was when it's only
Right.
got the maneuver of the vehicle, so. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Can we incorporate this as part of the minutes? So it would be online?
That was the reason for presenting it now, so
Yes.
that you could do that.
Okay, great. And then the full report is on the Regional Planning Commission website, the
That's
crash intersection report. It's a big one, but if people want to look at it. So this is for the whole 5-year period, 2011, 2015. So those 3 cycle crashes at those intersections, that's over a 5-year period.
Yeah, and it's my understanding, too, that this will be the last year of this type of report. They're moving to more of a regional safety report, so that will replace the skill report. It'll be incorporating, other things like corridors and selected treatments and a little bit more of a comprehensive safety aspect. And they'll separate out the rural and the urban areas and things like that, so.
Great. And I also wanted to comment on the commute rate, just to remind people that the 6.7% that from the American Community Survey is only people that go to work. So they had to have done some work in the previous 2 weeks before they got the survey. If they did work, then they could answer the question how they got there. So students that weren't working those 2 weeks before the survey wouldn't be counted in that. And it's also done on a continuous basis throughout the year, so that 6.7% is averaged, over a 52-week period, basically. So it's going to be a lot lower in the winter, a lot higher in the summer.
And it doesn't count anyone under 15?
That's probably right.
Or
yeah,
over
because-
60, or over 60 or
yeah, I
70?
think- yeah. Yep. Okay, thanks. We have new business. We had one agenda item I forgot to say we were going to delete at the beginning. Transportation semantics. Kevin's going to do that next time. We have a pretty full agenda anyway, and Kevin wanted a little bit more time to present that. Besides, he was working so hard on that FAQ, he didn't have time to work on this. Street closings for pedestrian events. Annie.
I was kind of hoping for that Kevin buffer zone, but all right. Here we go. All right. So I kind of rolled the pedestrian crossings in downtown Urbana and the street closings into just sort of one long presentation that we can stop at any point and talk about, if that's okay. Yes? All right. PCs always crack me up. Okay, so. Pedestrian crossings in downtown Urbana. So this is just a Google Street Map view of one of the main crossings in downtown Urbana. It's the one that I see gets the most pedestrian use, aside from the one that's in front of Crane Alley that has just paint on the ground and then a pedestrian cross sign, which is one I most frequently use because it's faster and it's faster. It's easier for me to get across the street and do what I need to do. So I just wanted to kind of show a picture of like what things look like. My main concern is there are beg buttons. They're not officially called beg buttons, but they're buttons that you have to push to cross the street if you're a pedestrian. So if you're a pedestrian, and these have also been installed on Green Street at Lincoln, and if you're a pedestrian, what it means is that when you approach the intersection, I kind of akin it to like getting getting checked out at a grocery store. Like sometimes you get in the wrong line, sometimes that's really fast or it's really slow, and so you don't get to kind of play that game. You actually have to like walk over, you have to figure out where the button is. If you're aware that there is a button you need to push, and then you have to push it. And vehicles and bikes normally don't have to push these buttons. Normally the signalization just works for them. So I know when I lived in Chicago, they actually pulled all of these out, and I'm sure there's a variety of reasons for why they got pulled out, but I was really surprised when I moved here and I saw them, especially in our downtown area. So the average wait's about 40 seconds to cross Main Street. And the videos didn't, I was using Keynote and the videos didn't load. So I have a video here, so it's not nearly as wonderful. But anyway, here's the video. I just took it last night when I got off work. I just went downtown and just started like counting and just like seeing how long it took. And it was about 40 seconds. So it's about 40 seconds to get across. If you get up and you push the button to get across once, you still have to push it and get across on the other one too. So, yep, just kind of wait. But frequently people don't wait, they just go. Oh, there it goes, now it's going. I did not spend a ton of time. I was probably there for like 20 minutes. I've looked at these a lot. I've watched people basically break the law on these frequently. We could make a lot of money if we wanted to ticket these. Most people walking are not complying with the signals. Most people push the button, they wait about 10 seconds, and then cross illegally. If we do want to use these, I think people need to feel like they actually work. Like, I pushed the button and a thing's going to happen. So here is just another quick video. This one's 17 seconds long. These folks just kind of, they looked around, they waited, they just went. They were like, I'm doing this thing. And then, oh wait, here's another couple. Oh, yeah, they're just like, forget it. We're just going to go. So I think there's pretty low compliance with, yeah, and they obviously had pushed the button. There's pretty low compliance with those kinds of buttons. And I understand, like, they seem awesome. I mean, from like I assume they seem awesome because maybe, I'm not exactly sure why. So anyway, you need to, why do people walking have to press beg buttons to cross the street? You need to push a button. This is reasons why people dislike them. It makes the transportation system seem like it prioritizes the free movement of cars. It feels hostile. It feels like you are not welcome here. It doesn't feel safe and attractive. It sends the message, you are not the norm. You don't belong here. Stop. We don't want you looking around. Stop. We don't want you here. And really, it's not worth the wait to cross the street and check out the shops on the other side. So a few things that could be done would be to possibly reduce the number of signals. Signaling makes car drivers less mindful of their surroundings. Car drivers are more likely to pay attention to pedestrians and other obstacles at stop signs when they have to take an active role in deciding when to stop and go. I'm not sure if stop signs are realistic in downtown Urbana, but that's one idea. Another idea is a diagonal or a crossing phase. So cut down on the two-stage crossing we have right now for pedestrians. These are what, at the university they have pedestrian scrambles, and the pedestrians and the cyclists all go at once. And it gets them out of the way for the vehicles and the car movement. And then you can also do some really cool artwork there if you want. Signal-free roundabouts have been shown to offer vast improvements when it comes to mitigating traffic flow and reducing pedestrian collisions. Some of these there's hot links throughout this for linking to facts. This was a presentation I did a while back. Traffic circles increase the perception of risk. So this is Washington at Cottage Grove. This is currently a street. There's a traffic circle and some pedestrian crosswalks and a chicane in the middle over there, and then the street becomes a place. And it just feels a lot more human scale and less truck car scale, which is what I think we're trying to get at in our downtown area, is to make it feel more human scale. There's a link to a webinar here on other things that can be done. signalization principles, you shorten the signal cycles, you prioritize multimodal travel, you minimize the number of signal phases, you set slow progression speeds, you adjust timing for off-peak hours, you consider fixed time signals. Another thing, we are going to be, the Green Street is going to come all the way from the university to downtown Urbana, so an idea of a green wave. So the idea of a system, like basically a system, a transportation system, considering like time and space essentially for all items that are all the, whether it's a car or a bus or a pedestrian or a bike or I don't know what else, but I think that's where we're at. E-bikes, I guess, would be the next one. But considering the movement of all those things, and maybe creating a green wave. And so what they do on green waves is they just say everything's set for 15 miles an hour. So you can go as fast as you want to the next stop sign, but you're not going to go anywhere because everything's set for 15 miles an hour. So I've ridden on these. They are very nice. Cars still do, speed ahead because I think they just don't believe it. I don't know. But it's nice because you just keep moving. You don't stop. Like if you were going 15 miles an hour, you just go. And you don't want to go faster because there's no incentive to go faster. Because if you go faster, you just have to stop. So there's that. And then this is my last slide. This is currently a street, and then street becomes a place. So I think right now the way I'm reading some of our downtown intersections is almost as they're very big and for what we're trying to make happen. So I'll leave it at that before I go into the street closings. Questions, ideas?
Thanks. Any questions or comments for Annie? Nancy?
So is this on? You're mainly talking about just Main Street, right? Because I find on Vine Street and University, I think those are really critical to have the signals. Main Street, the traffic is generally pretty slow. I mean, it seems like nobody really goes much over 20 miles an hour anyway. I don't know. I've never had. I mean, I don't mind the signals. I like them now. I think when I could see, I think I ignored them half the time. I will agree with that. But in some ways, I kind of agree that maybe stop signs would be, unless we thought that the traffic was going to increase on Main Street significantly, at least the one at Broadway and the one at Race may not be critical, but I think that the one at Vine and Main is critical. The other thing that I think is actually, it's kind of surprising to me there haven't been any accidents, is down more by Strawberry Fields. There should be a four-way stop down there, and that would slow traffic going east into the downtown area. But that's really terrible for pedestrians. So those are my comments.
Yeah.
Cynthia.
Yeah, I would really like for us to take a look at giving pedestrians priority during off-peak time periods on Main Street. I think that it's unlikely we're going to take signals out down there, but the reason why the pedestrians are ignoring the signal is because there's no cars in sight. And you stand there for, a reasonably long period of time for no reason, and so it is not sensible. People find it nonsensical to be standing there when there are no cars coming. And so during off-peak periods, I think it would be good to change the signal timing to give them priority so that when the button is pushed, unless there are vehicles coming, that it automatically shifts over and gives the pedestrians the right to cross. They do this in other places. It is entirely plausible to do it here, and so I would really like for us to explore that because I think it would make a difference. And during peak periods, I see the pedestrians obeying the signals because there are cars there. But the rest of the time, there are no cars. And so you're asking people to stand around and spend, 2 to 3 minutes crossing an intersection for no reason other than the fact that the signal is there. And I think that we should rethink that. The other thing that has concerned me since we redid the downtown is having given right turn on red the opportunity to happen there. And we still, we haven't had very many crashes there, so at this point, I'm willing to continue with that, but I think if we have any crashes from right-turning vehicles, we may want to revisit that, because there are some sight distance issues at a couple of those locations, but it may be that people are going slow enough that that's the reason why it hasn't been an issue, that they really are paying attention. With the bulb outs there, the pedestrians are more visible.
I think at Race and Main, there is one direction that doesn't allow the right turn on red because of the sight issues. And I agree that the push button signals are real important for people that need extra time to get across the street, I think. And we did just spend a whole bunch of money replacing both of those intersections a few years ago, so it's probably not going to go away. But and then as far as the scramble goes, is there a standard that you need should have a certain amount of pedestrian traffic or something before you implement a scramble?
All of our scrambles, our only scramble is Goodwin Green, and that is the second highest other than Wright and Green as far as the pedestrian movements. It does, you really need a consistent demand, and that's what you have at Goodwin Green, with the students there. So there are thresholds or metrics that you would need
on
to.
pedestrian priority, are there such things as adaptable signals that kind of learn what's going on around them, and if there's more car traffic, they'll give cars priority, and if there's less car traffic,
There
pedestrians
are, but we
priority?
don't have that technology. It's pretty expensive. We do have different timing plans, though, that are implemented. Those are done, but the adaptive, there's actually the Department of Transportation installed some on Neal Street, like south of Windsor, right in that corridor there. There's some adaptive signals. We don't have that capability in Urbana. It's just really expensive for us, but.
For the timing, do you actually have to go out physically to the signal and adjust timing?
Yeah,
or we don't
they
remote
have a
control?
program, and they hook up a laptop to it and everything. But we can, I think Cynthia's point's well taken. We've adjusted the timings. It's a fine balance. A lot of what you see is as a result of the installation of the bike lanes, quite frankly, and the road diet. That's what happened. And we did a synchro analysis, which is a simulation software that allowed us to put the road diet in the first place. Some of the concerns was the queuing would occur, the backups could occur, and then particularly at the Crane Alley crossing there, that if the car's backed up so far, then what you get is aggressive behavior, and you get it's really can be seriously unsafe for pedestrians to cross there when you have queued up traffic. So it's a balancing act. But I think we could look at maybe trying to adjust our off-peak times. As far as the stop signs, the signals, I think, are warranted. The demand of traffic, what you do get is you're just going to get a spillover, and drivers do get aggressively. Their behavior gets, they'll start running the stop signs. That's what we see. So we got to balance all that out with, particularly for disabled and elderly and such, and they can receive a call then. And yes, it does take time to get that call. So it's a balancing act that we're trying to do here with it all.
I think I have seen a little bit of that aggressive behavior at Washington and Vine. That's probably almost justifiable to have a stoplight there, but nobody wants one there. Nobody here wants a stoplight there, I don't think. Morgan?
Oh, on a roundabout
I
myself.
don't know,
Um,
kids want a stoplight there.
Do they? Well, yeah,
Yes,
for high school.
Kids hate that.
I wonder, I think it's really a valid point that it feels like pedestrians aren't wanted because the default is that there's not a walk signal. I wonder if there's a way even during the peak times to have, I mean, do you have to have that option on the system where there's no walk? I mean, maybe you do. We have that at Oak and Kirby by my office. You can't, they can't have the pedestrian light to cross Kirby because it takes so long and the traffic would back up behind at 45. So there's a technical reason that they have to have the button to be able to cross. But we still have the button active during the peak times. Or it always turns on the pedestrian light during the peak times.
Exactly.
Because that's when we have so many people, pedestrians crossing the road too. So I don't know if there's,
Yeah.
is there an option to have, maybe
Why-
the button
why
could
doesn't
be
the
a
walk
longer
just come
one
on
or
whenever the
something?
Right, that's what
turns
yeah,
green.
that is my question, because even on like Green and Lincoln, like, I don't know why the walk doesn't just come on. If you want to push the button and wait for the full cycle and get the full thing, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't understand why, I mean, the lights go off if there's no cars. I don't know why, I just super don't understand why there's just not a walk sign. Because what I do is when I'm approaching an intersection, whichever one turns to walk first, I go. And the thing with this is you walk up to it and you're like, and you run back and forth pushing both, going, okay, which one's going to let me go? And it just feels hostile, frankly.
I
Well,
also-
I can tell you the intent is never to make things hostile.
I'm sure, yeah, I know.
You know, we, quite frankly, it's a balancing act. I mean, you have, I don't know the numbers, but if I have to guess, I mean, 95% of the users are vehicles that run through the intersection. So I'm just telling you, that's, when we're balancing it out, if we give pedestrians the priority, what happens then is, I mean, for all the time that you're asking for, then we have queues and we have backups. We took 4 lanes, we took one lane out in each direction to make bike lanes. So you take 4 away, we still have the same amount of traffic and we're condensing it down into the same space. So then we have to look at queuing vehicles. Once we queue vehicles back up, like from Race up to Broadway, it gets dangerous. So we have to balance that safety act. I mean, I'm speaking as a traffic engineer on the philosophies on what we're looking at here. In the off-peak, we could maybe look at some of those things.
Exactly.
But it's a balancing act, folks. I mean, and as far as us studying it, it's not on our radar to study at this point. I mean, we don't, it's not there. I'm not saying, I'm just telling you, we have limited staff, we have limited things on our plate. And we can look at, I think, Cynthia's suggestion and try to start looking at off-peak, maybe begin there. But I mean, you know, you're presenting on some things, and I know you all like to come and put me on the spot, which I quite frankly don't always
We know we're just
appreciate.
learning from you, Craig. We aren't trying to
Right.
put you on the spot. We're-
I know, but I mean, I'm the representative for Public Works here, but I mean, I don't have time to prepare. You're presenting everything and
Yeah.
putting me.
No, we're not.
No,
you know,
we're
so-
just asking questions because we don't
Right.
understand.
And I'm
Yeah.
just telling you truthfully,
We appreciate
the
it.
way that we think of things. And I know that that doesn't jive with the bicycle pedestrian way all the time, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it with you and tell you something different. I'm just going to tell you
That's all
this
we're
is what
asking,
we're-
yeah. And so when I go across like Florida and Lincoln, I know there's a lot of left and right turn signals, so whenever the light's green, unless it says walk, I don't trust it, you know. In other places, the light turns green, I feel comfortable walking even though the walk signal doesn't come on. So is there any way to make sure that the downtown intersections couldn't be done that way, where the light signal turns green and the walk comes on automatically, or are there just too many turns?
We can investigate the timing. I mean, that's the best answer I could tell you at this point.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks.
But it's
We aren't trying, we really do
collectively a
appreciate.
whole system. I mean, we're looking all the way from Vine to Race.
Yeah.
You know, it's a corridor there. They're not set for progression to get, you know, it's about moving vehicles through so that we basically don't back them up so much that they have aggressive behavior. But the intent is not to also move them through at such a high speed either, though. That's where we're balancing things out. So we cut it off, they have to stop. So it's a balancing act. the best I can tell you is that we can, when we have time, investigate this and see what we can.
Yeah, no, we aren't
alter.
asking for anything immediate. We're just trying to learn,
Right.
what's possible.
Yeah, I think during peak period, we have to, you're absolutely right, there are more vehicles than there are pedestrians, but I think off-peak, there are often more pedestrians than there are vehicles, and so that's when, if we could make that shift, I think it would make a difference in the complaints that we're hearing.
Yeah, and, to your point, we do go, to red flash at portions, and that may be something that we need to really look at. Because I think at that point, that's when it does, a red flash operates like a stop sign. And that does make it easier in these off-peak periods to do. And that may be something where we need to expand that to make it a little bit friendlier for pedestrians.
Great. Thanks. Anyone, any other comments on that before Annie goes on?
Did you, no?
I was going to just check if he was going to look into the red flash option for off-peak. So.
Okay,
Thanks.
you can continue, Annie. Oh, sorry, Kara.
I also just want to mention, like, keeping up with these things and sort of the maintenance too. Like I've learned a lot being in planning and operations at the Park District about like how cool my idea is, but it's actually not that cool for someone that's plowing snow or replacing signs that are getting hit or things like that. So I think that, like Craig mentions there being a balance, there's also that for the design and the way in which it not only makes it easier for us to implement it, but also for people to be safe and to cross and things like that.
Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Annie.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just kind of, when I saw we had the new Greenway on, and I saw, on Lincoln Avenue, and then I saw that there was going to be a button to push, and I see the students not pushing it, and I see not compliance with it, and I see people crossing, and I see the right-hand cars turning, we are going to have an accident there. And that kind of freaked me out. So as much as I think it's cool, it's not really about me thinking it's cool. It's more that we do have a lot of pedestrians, and we do have a lot of cyclists, and vehicles are large, so they do take up a lot of space, and we are prioritizing vehicle movement. And if we want to have a mode shift, if we want to say these are residential streets and things are prioritized differently, we have to make our street design and make our light signalization and make our entire system prioritized for that kind of movement. And I understand people in cars get upset. They're always going to get upset no matter what we do. At least that's what I've learned. I have never seen car drivers not get upset about, you give them a 70-mile-per-hour speed limit, they want it 80. I mean, it's just, you're driving a machine, and machines are fun to move around. I don't know. But anyway, that's it. Okay. So, street closings for pedestrian events. Streets are publicly owned assets, and they're shared assets. Everyone from the day they are born until the day they die pays for our street system. It's a myth that people who drive cars pay more for the streets. An equitable street system allows all users to access and use this shared asset. I grew up in a city of 40,000 residents with a struggling downtown. My 9 brothers and sisters walked and biked to school, work, and play by ourselves starting in kindergarten. We lived a little over under about a mile, mile and a half, 2 miles from most activities, and we were not afraid of vehicular violence. About 10-15 years ago, Waukesha started building a series of 4 to 6 story residential buildings about 1 to 2 blocks from their downtown. The city also started a farmer's market, which was very small at first and now has grown into multiple blocks, added pedestrian amenities along the Fox River. They had water that's similar to our creek. They exposed it, they opened it up. People can walk along there. They added sculptures. There are nearby off-street rails to trails paths that have been developed, and people can bike into downtown. And they do not have, if I lived in Waukesha, they do not have enough bike parking, frankly. I saw all these like people coming in on their bikes when I was there recently, and I was like, where are they coming from and what? And they don't have enough bike parking. So, so Craig, to your point, no matter what you do, Craig, it's never going to be enough. So I'm just, that is unfortunately the job of a traffic engineer. So anyway, in Waukesha, all of this is new. The city now has 70,000 residents. The house next door to my parents sold in less than a week. The young couple said they liked the downtown and being able to walk and bike. Oh, and one more thing. About 15 years ago, Waukesha embraced the hometown hero, Les Paul. Les Paul, if any of you know who he is, he, I believe, invented the electric guitar. And started a weekly series closing the streets in the downtown district. It's called Friday Night Live. So Waukesha started developing, shutting down the streets and having music and having community events, and it's been very successful. Current conditions in Waukesha's downtown. So I was there, I ran a half marathon, and I saw these just amazing scarecrows. And as you can see, there's no bike parking behind that one scarecrow. They just pop their bikes up behind there. And like the one on the dragon is from they were done by local businesses. So you have the library's done one, accessibility folks did this other one, so on and so forth. So I just thought these were lovely. They really increased street culture. As you can see, well, you can't see this because I didn't take a good picture of it, but sitting behind the scarecrow, what they did was they narrowed their streets and they did bump outs, so it's a very, very tight two-way. It's just a very, very tight two-way. Cars can only go forward, and if you're on a bike, you have to get behind the cars. There's that, and I just thought I'd include a picture of my parents and my husband. And then on the right, one of the first things I saw them doing was painting these electric boxes, and that was years ago, and it continues to this day. So this gets into the question of how do you build a place where people want to live? People want to buy a house, rent a home, pay taxes, take out a large loan, fix up their home, raise kids, invite friends to visit, and generally enjoy living in. How do you make a place like that? People are attracted to people. People are attracted to easily understandable narratives. So for 1 year, I did something called Imbibe Urbana with Kristen Walters. Imbibe Urbana is still going on. I am no longer doing it. Kristen's no longer doing it. And what it was every first Friday, we would talk to local businesses, we would talk to artists, whoever was interested in doing something. So these women wanted to do a fashion show. We had people from the university come and entomologists come and show bugs. We had people who did fire performances. We had hula hoop stuff. I don't know. We just had hula hoops out. I remember. Someone came and they brought free hula hoops and free chalk and threw it on the street. It was lovely. And it was a lovely experience. And I know people who bought homes in Urbana because of this event. I know people who, live here now because of this event, aside from buying homes. When we were doing it, we got a lot of, the city was not welcoming to what we were doing. It was a lot of work. And we were just doing it as volunteers. So that's why we no longer do it. Now, there are people that are doing it and trying to keep it alive. They are running into the similar problems that we ran into. There's that. So other things, when we do street closings for pedestrian events, we do this. I have some video of because I thought it was fun. We have the Illinois Marathon, and you can see Carolyn Baxley across the street. When this happened, we actually were surprised that the entire street was not shut down. And they said, oh, no, we cannot shut the whole street down. We can only shut down half. So we had invited people to cheer. We created a little cheering squad because we were told that downtown Urbana was empty. So we were told we had to stand over here on this half. So we did. So there's that. Now the next slide is, let's see. So the term for this is called destination activity. So when we were doing Imbibe Urbana, we were buying bigger and bigger Facebook ads, and we were getting people from all sorts of places. You'd invite people down for the weekend to come to it, so they're destination activities. So the Illinois Marathon is a destination activity. Mardi Gras in New Orleans, yet another event that happens on the street, is also a destination activity. And I just thought for a little fun we should watch this video. These are the 610 stompers. So these are called walking crews, and folks dress up like each other, and they compose dances, and they walk in the floats, and it's generally a good time. So these are just that's what these are. These are walking crews, and so New Orleans has a lot of they have a lot of streets, and as you'll see, there's a truck following them. You know, I'm not anti-car. There's a truck that follows them with the big speakers. The way they get the big floats down from Mardi Gras, they have giant tractors. But the pedestrian movement is clearly prioritized in this space. And Mardi Gras, as you can only imagine, Mardi Gras is a huge economic tool for the city of New Orleans. So there's that. And I highly recommend going there if you can. It is worth it. Full screen, thank you, Control L. So another big destination activity is Bike the Drive. It's a fundraiser actually for active transportation in Chicago. As you can see, MB, it's a financial group, sponsors Bike the Drive. They shut down Lakeshore Drive. Lakeshore Drive has probably way more traffic in one day than every city street in the city of Urbana. And they just shut it down for a couple hours, and you ride your bike around. You pay a ridiculously large sum of money to do this activity. Well, I think it's ridiculously large. I used to ride my bike downtown every day, so it just cracked me up. I was like, really? You're just going to go pay money to do my commute? Okay. But it's very successful, and it's at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of summer, so it gets people to get their bikes fixed up and ready to go, and it's very positive and fun. And it is really fun, actually, to ride on Lakeshore Drive on your bike. You just realize how vast the infrastructure is and how much money and how much energy we put into moving vehicles every day. I did an activity called Bike Parade, and I did it on Father's Day, and I registered it as National Bike Parade Day. And so we had costumes, and we did historical walks, and when we got to the park, we had apples from Whole Foods, and we had coffee, and we had music, and other things like that. This year, I went to the Labor Day Parade, and the street was not shut down, and all my neighbors were on the side of the street with their little kids, and people were freaking out because cars were driving down the street and the street was still open. We saw 2 City of Urbana trucks slowly making their way down the street, but trucks were still coming from the other direction. So I went home and got an orange and a yellow safety vest, and I just stood at the end of Washington Avenue with them out and just asked traffic to stop coming down the street. And when the City of Urbana trucks caught up to me, they said, you don't have to do that. You are upsetting the cars. The cars are getting angry. And I said, this is an embarrassment. I said, this is one time in the year that neighbors want to cross the street and talk to each other and see each other. There's just one time in the year that people want to be on the street. And I was like, this is only an hour, if even that, 30 minutes. I just don't get this. And what was kind of cool was everyone started coming in and saying, yes, she's right, this is crazy. And it was that sort of just got me thinking, is there any way we could do a destination activity, do maybe a Labor Day bike parade from 8 to 10 a.m. on the actual parade route that morning. We have people, it is a county-wide parade, I believe, so we have people coming from all around the county, and we could It's the YMCA Welcome Week would be interested in partnering with us. We have a lot of new people who have come here from other places who are new to the city of Urbana. It might be a nice way to introduce them to the city of Urbana. And so I just kind of want to put that out there as an idea. It could be something the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Commission helps partner with. So that's just like one thing, but it was just very disappointing to not see that street shut down just for that little bit of time. And the city of Urbana folks told me, they said, we don't have money to shut the street down. We can't afford it. And they said that it upsets cars if we shut the street down. And I said, okay. And there are hundreds of people standing on the side of the street. So it was sort of strange. And people were very upset because they had little toddlers, and it was kind of scary for them. So anyway, one last thing I just want to leave with is North Carolina does this really interesting thing where it's 100 miles of biking, walking, rolling, whatever you want it to be, and you just log your miles. And it's back to an idea Cynthia had. So you log your miles, and it just gets you out there. It's not about streets, but it is just a public activity, and it's called the 100-Mile Challenge. So if anybody is interested in looking more into that, there is obviously social media that people do about it. Blue Cross Blue Shield helps sponsor it, as there are a couple other sponsors. So that is it. And then this final page is just one of the first pieces I did kind of in regards to all this was people tend to sit where there are places to sit. And people in the community donated 100 light movable seating chairs, and then we put them out on the streets and people painted them, and then we just left the chairs behind for people to sit on. Because once you have children and moms occupying a space, you tend to get everybody else. And chairs are really helpful, especially for people who are older, or for people who are younger, or just for creating a sense of community. Chairs are just really helpful things. So that is what I have to say about that. So I don't know if there's any questions, comments, ideas?
Questions or comments for Annie? Yes, Sue?
Well, I would think, we do have the marathon as our destination and unofficial, and I think we can do better.
Yeah.
Morgan?
I just wanted to clarify for the National Bike Parade on Father's Day. That wasn't here, right? That was
Nope. Yeah. Yeah.
But the closing the street for the Labor Day
Yeah.
parade. What was the event because I know during the parade it's closed. What was
Yeah.
it that was happening before? Was it before
The street was open,
parade?
so people were queuing up for the parade. People were coming with their little kids and themselves, and they were all at the edge. They're sitting on the grass, and cars are driving right down the street.
So it wasn't that you had the bike parade at
Nope.
that time. It was just
Yeah,
there were
no,
all
the
people
picture
waiting.
is, yeah, the picture was more inspirational, less real. Yeah, it was a thing that I did previous. I think if we did something for Labor Day, it would be more of an open streets event. So it would be people bike, walking, rolling. People that would live along the route could have barbecues. They could have music on their front porch. Yeah, you just make it just a community event.
And then you were saying that the city staff you spoke to said they couldn't afford to close the street.
No, they were unable to close the street. They said they didn't have enough staffing or money to close the street.
But they did
But
close
then they
it.
don't they have to close it for the parade? Or
They
is
did. They
is
were
that
in
not
front
how
of the
it works?
parade, so that's how they.
Oh, that's the process. Okay.
Yeah, so that was, the parade
get it.
started at 10, and so people were queuing up before 10 o'clock. So that was, my idea was that we could shut the parade route down at like 8 o'clock. And then from 8 to 10, we could have an open streets event, and then at 10 o'clock, we could have the parade.
Yeah, and I just wonder, the people, and you said that someone said that the vehicle drivers were getting frustrated that you were blocking the roadway, right?
They said it creates, they said when you shut down a street, the vehicles become upset, and they get angry and they drive worse.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that was an official city statement, but we could look into.
Well, I think I just heard something similar.
Okay.
No,
from an
I know
official.
that if you, if you don't follow the manual on uniform traffic control devices and you put stop signs everywhere, vehicle drivers are going to act out. And that's, behave aggressively. And I think that's what Craig was referring to, is that you have to set up the entire system in a way that tries to minimize.
Yeah, so if you have a
bad
good detour
behavior,
routes and
right.
everything,
Yeah.
and catch
Yep.
people early enough. I think that's a great idea to have the bike the route kind of activity beforehand and try to get it shut down earlier.
Yeah, I
Maybe we
think that's a
could,
good idea.
Because it
But
would
it-
solve, it would solve the problem like of the city, Normally what happened was there would just be cones and people, and that's what my neighbors were all upset, they of course thought I was crazy when I went out with my things, but I was just so freaked out. I mean, these cars were driving around like,
Well, it's true,
Very
Annie,
bad.
that drivers behave badly, because the first couple of years I volunteered and worked with the marathon, and they had to have law enforcement at several of the intersections, and even then people were defying the officers and trying to drive through the marathon route. I mean, it was pretty ridiculous, and so it takes a lot of law enforcement for those big events. I think now people have resigned themselves to the marathon and they don't behave as badly as they did the first few years. But initially there is that kind of an issue, and it does often require the additional assistance of law enforcement. And I think with the marathon, I don't know how the cost share goes on all of this. I know that the city expends considerable resources, but there's a certain return on investment in terms of sales tax from the people who come into town, and I don't know what those figures look like, if it's really a net benefit to the city for that event in terms of our revenues, but it does take quite a bit of budgeting from the city to manage those events. The same thing is true of football games and some other big events that happen.
that reminds me, when we were doing Imbibe Urbana, we did actually ask businesses how much money they were making on the evenings that we did them, and some folks were making over $5,000 a night. Individual businesses were, so I suspect that was quite helpful to the city of Urbana. But we were more interested in just creating a habit, making downtown Urbana a habit, and for people to understand that there's multiple businesses in downtown Urbana that you can come to, and that there's, this is the community you live in, and these are the people and things and what happens. And so shutting down the street, when the city allowed the shutting down of Main Street, it was incredibly helpful. It was very wonderful.
Yep, Sue?
Yeah, I think a lot of the aggressive and hostility could be, I think people have just gotten used to, okay, there's a marathon, I have to plan.
Yeah.
And I think we can have that happen if we have an event, if they know, okay, Labor Day, right before the parade, you're not going to be able to go there. And it's just, there's going to be a little friction at the beginning, because any culture change does have friction, but I think it's a culture change worth pushing for.
Anyone else? Yep, Jeff?
Annie, wasn't the Public Health District trying to do an open streets event like a couple of years ago? Did you ever touch base with them? Do you know?
Cynthia's.
Annie wasn't here yet when we were doing that. She knows about it. I've
Yeah.
given her
We
information on
tried.
it.
I'm trying to go in the Wayback Machine. We tried looking into that, and I forget, because even when we were doing Imbibe Urbana, we wanted to do a street shutdown like through the Arts District, and
Campus.
there was a whole variety of, it turned into this sort of thing. And what I just realized when I was at the Labor Day parade was I was like, the street's getting shut down. The parade route's set up. There's literally 20 cars on the streets right now. It's Labor Day morning. There's just not that much traffic. And I thought, well, we've already going through this effort. This just might be a really nice opportunity. It's a really nice route. And people can just do loops and laps. And
I wonder I don't know how the Public Health District was going to fund that event that they were working on, but if they have access to grants or whatever, and if it's an issue of paying the public works guys or the police officers additional overtime for the 2 hours that it's open before the parade, partnering with the Public Health District, and maybe they were going to get sponsors that would help pay for that overtime and setting out the cones or whatever. Then potentially there would be a way to fund that open streets event prior, because I would assume it's not free to do that. kind of like what they were saying, this adds cost to keep it open for 2 additional hours. So maybe there's an opportunity there to see if they have any interest in helping with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it might be a good way for bike share companies to advertise too, have a fleet of bike
Mhm.
shares, kind
Yep.
of start off the parade for an hour. And
Yep. And it's nice because the city of Urbana has quite a few new residents every year, and so there's a lot of re-educating that often has to happen about what our amenities are, what we have, who we are. So it seems to me like a very good opportunity to, for the city as well, to say this is who we are and this is what we do and this is how we can help. And do you want a tree in your front yard? We can do that for you. Things like that. But yeah.
Okay. Craig?
You mentioned you talked to city staff. Have you talked to anybody like the public works director or the
I
mayor
didn't.
or anybody? No,
I
I would
didn't.
encourage you
Yeah.
to do so. If you have
Yeah.
interest in these events, I think they could certainly work out the logistics of it, and then maybe there's an identified cost that then you could then approach somebody for a grant or assistance. I found our director, who of course is retiring here at the end of this month, but all the city staff, I mean, we'll certainly, I don't think anybody's ever shut anything out, but there is logistical things that have to be worked out. I know I volunteer for the marathon, and I also work in some off years at the EOC. So during the marathon, when it's shut down, we have to have emergency people at the Emergency Operations Center. So there's a bunch of police officers, firefighters. It's a big, big event, but it also allows for really some type of re-educating every year of the logistics of doing something like that. So then when we know how to handle and communicate and things. So I would just encourage you to, go ahead and take that voice and contact, people like the Public Works Director or the mayor and begin the dialogue.
And I would like to say that Illinois Marathon is just, I've done quite a few athletic events in my life. I was beyond impressed.
It's really well organized. Yeah.
Beyond impressed, yeah. It's the first athletic event that I signed up as soon as I could for this again. I mean, I was like, this is so well run.
If you sign up now, you can save like $10.
I know, yeah, that might be the other reason why I didn't.
I think the marathon does reimburse the cities for some of their police and overtime for the marathon. I don't know if it covers all of it, but it also generates a lot of.
Some people,
Yeah.
they don't do, I do it for free.
Oh yeah, no,
that's
just
like
the
there is.
I think just for some of the
There's some
police,
staff that I don't.
police overtime or something like that. There's a set amount I think that they reimburse the cities for.
For the uniform staff. And we plan.
Use your
a month-
microphone.
I'm sorry. But we plan, like, as soon as it ends, we're planning for the next year. So it's a year-long planning process to do that event, and that takes our time
Yep.
going to
Yeah.
the meetings to
Yep.
get ready for the planning on that.
But Visit
So-
Champaign County also will tell you how many millions of dollars it generates and regenerates, because when it gets spent in the community, supposedly it gets spent 2 or 3 times. So.
Yeah, but it's no small thing for either city
Yeah.
and the university, so.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned that the marathon's running through Champaign as well, so it's an
Yeah.
interesting point of comparison to how Champaign is approaching the logistics and the cost of closing the streets. I know there's been some question on whether Urbana's been, as forthcoming in some years in the past as Champaign. Now, there might be that Champaign gets a lot more business, too. I don't know, more revenue.
Yeah, more hotels.
Going back to your point about the streets being for people, another thought I had is, again, flipping the paradigm. What if you have a sign that says, today the street is open for cars? And then we just take away the open sign on the day that it's going to be used for people instead. I mean, it's just recognizing that the streets are for everyone. That right now, cars feel entitled 100% to the street.
Yes.
So a long-term retraining, re-education has to occur,
Yep.
I think, and just completely flipping that around till people say, oh,
Yeah.
I guess it isn't just for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I go back to like when I try to see kids like trying to cross Washington to go to school. I mean, no parent in their right mind is going to let their child try to run across that I mean, run. Like, you will run. I mean, I walked to school. I walked through intersections. I didn't think I was going to get hit, you know, and I did it starting in kindergarten. This, you know, and so I guess to me, and I, you know, and I did recently see, I was sitting on my parents' front porch, and I said, whoa, cars are driving real fast down this street now, Mom, aren't they? And I said, you know, and I was seeing all this crazy pop-up crosswalk signs and all these things at the kindergarten on the corner by where I used to go to school. And I was like, wow, so even here, like even here, people are just, you know, they're not driving safely. You know, it's just strange. So.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah. No, thank you.
I have
And
one
sorry,
other-
Craig, I am
Oh.
not, like, don't even, you are doing a great job. You just have a really hard job because streets are very controversial. I was going to include a slide that said that streets are controversial. You will never please everyone or anyone, really, when you're dealing with streets. They are one of the most contested public spaces. So, yeah, it's like copyright law. You know, there's no.
Well, also, two other times that we could plan to close the streets are when University finally gets done and when Green Street gets done, from Lincoln to downtown. Those would be two perfect times to have big festival.
Yep, okay. Last item of new business is Craig, update us on the speed reduction on Lincoln Avenue.
So, a couple years ago, we started noticing some additional crashes occurring on the Lincoln Avenue corridor for Pennsylvania up to Nevada. And back in October of 2016, we did a speed study, which I'll show you the results of. And we did an analysis along the corridor, and there were some recommendations from that study to do curb bump outs at some of the intersections, do enhanced pedestrian signage with the blinky lights and such. All those items are items that we plan to pursue in future highway safety grant when they're available. But in the short term, what the Traffic Commission recommended was to lower the speed limit from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour during that section of roadway, which has a tremendous amount of pedestrians crossing the street, and there have been some severe crashes and fatalities along that section of roadway. So in October of 2016, we did a study, and then we also did a study in September of this year to see what the results of the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit were. The speed limit signs went up August 2nd of this year, just prior to the semester starting. This is a picture of the 25-mile-an-hour. There are two signs northbound. This is the first one, and then we have a second one that's pretty much mid corridor. And then we have another one, this is southbound, and then mid corridor. So just to give you an idea, we do have two signs up in each direction. So I'm going to kind of, there's a lot of things to show here, but I'm going to zoom in if I can. Wonder why I did that.
Craig, can I just give you, I actually really want to give you props for doing this, because I went to a lot of these meetings, and people were very much against changing the speed limit on this little tiny section, like it was, what, a quarter mile? And people were like really against dropping the speed limit from 30 to 25. I truly was very surprised by that. I didn't realize people would be so upset about adding, I think we actually figured it out. We thought it was 8 seconds to their commute, but it was just, But, Craig just said, just, stick with it. And so we just kept showing up at the meetings and saying, yes, we really need the speed limit in front of McKinley Health Center dropped to 25 miles an hour. But it was very, very interesting. I was not prepared for that kind of blowback.
So I'll do it this way. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the, so we did, in August of 2016, we did a before and after, or before speed study. The results I'm showing here are the before study. The top row is the southbound speeds. The bottom row is the northbound speeds. The things that we look for typically as traffic engineers is the 85th percentile speed. That's the speed at which at least 85% of the vehicles are traveling. We're seeing somewhere hovering around 30 mile an hour. This would be the mean speed, the 50% speed, where half the drivers are driving at this rate. And then this was the max speed, which was around 46, 47 mile an hour. We had about 11.2% exceeding in the southbound and about 41.1% in the northbound. We also look at the 10 mile an hour pace, and this is from 24 hours of data that we have. And that would be measuring about 8,800 cars. So the 10 mile an hour pace is where the greatest amount of vehicles are within the 10 mile an hour range. So you're seeing somewhere around 21 to 31 in the southbound and 24 to 34 in the northbound. So we went out and did a post-speed reduction, same exact location, almost identical in times of year. And we are showing results that we're, at this point, disappointed in receiving. The 85th percentile speed dropped only just a little bit. The max speed didn't really get impacted. Actually, we had some higher max speeds than before. We have a greater amount, obviously, now because we've dropped the speed of percent exceeding. I want to go to the last slide here, so this would show the difference. So what we're seeing is, particularly this 85th percentile, is the southbound. We have a little less than 1 mile an hour reduction in speed, and about a half, which is pretty negligible, northbound-wise. Sometimes what you'll see when speeds are reduced like that, you may still get a high 85th percentile, but you'll usually see sometimes that the max speed, the high speed drops in turn. But we're not seeing that. We actually saw some contrary numbers to that. Obviously, we've got a higher percent exceeding. The 10 mile an hour pace did drop in the southbound by about 2 miles an hour, but the northbound didn't drop at all.
Craig? I'm sorry, I'm really worried that it's not an apples to apples, just because it wasn't the first one before, you said it was before the students came. You did it during the summer? Or what was
the first
date
one
of
was in October, the second one was in September. So they are apples to apples there in the fall semester. So one is in October of 2016, and one of them was in September of 2016.
For the max speed, that's just, it could be one car.
It
that
could be
went that
one
fast.
car.
Yeah.
It could be one car. They are apples to apples. They're also the same day of the week.
Yeah, that you resolved it for me. I was worried.
Yeah. A lot. What I would expect with a 5 mile an hour reduction would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 miles an hour reduction in speeds.
So I have a question. Did we have any additional law enforcement after the change in speed? My feeling is that one of our issues along Lincoln is that I don't see a lot of enforcement, especially of the crosswalks there. And I know our police are pretty overextended, but given the fact that people have been killed, it seems like maybe we could try and ask for some enforcement to occur there on a periodic basis.
Right. What we can do here is, you folks requested the information, but now I can present this information to the Traffic Commission. And then the Traffic Commission can then, if they choose to do so, make a request for law enforcement to do some step enforcement. The other approach that we do recommend is speed feedback signs. So that would then, and we have some this week over on Mumford near Yankee Ridge where we have a speeding issue. Yeah, we've had some complaints. We did do a study there, and it didn't really warrant STEP, which is selective traffic enforcement, but we did feel that at least getting the speed feedback signs out would help the public become aware. And I agree with you, Cynthia. I think that no, we did not have any additional enforcement here. It's merely a swapping out of signs. But I think what you see, at least when I've driven through, is habit. You're seeing people drive and they're not paying attention to signs. I have theories on that I think we're oversaturated in some ways with all the information that's coming at us. We also have our distracted driving that occurs more today than years ago. Yes, people are wanting to get to where they want to go, and we're an impatient society. But I think we do have to get our point across here that we have a new demarcation, which is a 25-mile-an-hour zone. Now that we have some data, we can then take that to the Traffic Commission. But I wanted to make sure you guys saw it first.
With the northbound being so much faster, makes sense because Lincoln it feels faster, and people are probably going faster coming up Lincoln.
Right.
Do you know, or Morgan, maybe you know, either of you know if there were discussions about trying to reduce speed on Lincoln through the university?
You mean south of Florida?
Yeah, south of Florida, I mean.
I do not know at this time.
Okay. Do you know, have you heard anything about potential for?
I've heard that there might be some talk down there, Vet Med, but I don't know any more than that.
I can find out, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a
For those
question?
that don't know, the Lincoln Avenue south of Florida is actually university jurisdiction. That's their road.
Yeah, I had a question about, and I'm just wondering if there's the reduced speed ahead signs further out, or is it just the speed limit signs at this point?
The reduced speed, we go with greater than 5 mile an hour. So we're only dropping a 5 mile an hour increment, so we don't put those signs
Is it an
up.
option, or is it?
No, you want to
Just-
be over 10 mile an hour.
Okay.
So you'll see them on the periphery of cities when you're coming in. That's when it's got to be greater than 10.
And then, were you saying that only the Traffic Commission can request additional enforcement?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
commission cannot?
No,
Not as a commission?
not as a commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Hey, Craig, how wide are the lane widths on Lincoln, just out of curiosity?
Oh, I think they're fairly narrow. I mean, I think when we did that road dial, I mean, I'm not sure exactly, but I'm thinking somewhere around 10 to
they're at
11.
11
They're
feet.
pretty narrow.
I think we kept them at 11 because of the bus.
Yeah.
I've argued in favor of the 11-foot lanes when we have frequent bus routes because it creates a problem, especially on some of the streets where we have bike lanes. We don't on this street, but it's an issue trying to have the buses pass one another in 10-foot lanes and having all the surrounding activity going on campus. When we don't have the frequent bus routes, 10-foot works great, but this is a pretty high-frequency bus corridor.
I do think if we can get the bump outs in, that'll provide some constriction. And I think the constriction point is the most important point into reducing speeds.
What's the status of an application?
Well, as you know, I'm a straight shooter, so I'll tell you, we had intended to apply for highway safety funds. However, we have learned that the Department of Transportation, because of difficulties in getting grants come to fruition with many cities throughout the state, has changed their requirements. So they are requesting that studies be performed and reports be analyzed, environmental clearances be done prior to the application for grants. So what happened then is we're in a situation where we have no capital funding at this time for the study. We will likely ask City Council in the next capital improvement plan coming next spring to allocate money for the study to begin an official study. When I say an official study, it means that you go through a set of hoops, basically, that are pretty rigorous to, and you have to have public feedback, and you have to have environmental clearances and things like that. So that's where we'll probably sit. We'll miss this current round. We'll probably go to do the other, this next study. The The quandary we're in, folks, though, is we have a pot of money that we're working with, and we have to take money from the future now, and we're going to have to put that to the money now. And that means that we then will limit the amount of road work that we can do in the future. So there's a balance, again, a balancing act, which everything is a balancing act. Everything we are doing there now. We also have the Race and Florida intersection, which is has some accidents there that we want to address in the future too. So that's kind of where we're sitting at this point. Now we could still we could always submit and see where it goes. It just that what happens is if we did get it, then we are on the hook to get it done in a short amount of time, and then that's a capital cost right at that point. So we do know that we have some serious concerns there. So that's why we lowered the speed limit. I think we take this to Traffic Commission and recommend to do some select enforcement, do the speed feedback signs. We do have enhanced pedestrian signs on the ends of the corridor ordered, and we intend as soon as they get in, and those will be flashing on a timed basis. We've done, we have information where we'll look at the peak amount of, or the higher amount of pedestrian traffic. So it might be like, say, 9 or 10 in the morning when the students are awake going to school, that it starts flashing, and then it shuts off at some point when our data shows that we have lesser students. So that way it's indicating, hey, this is a high pedestrian area. That also may help slow speeds down inadvertently.
And so you said that's in the works, that's coming?
Yeah, we've purchased the signs. We're just waiting for the order to come in, or we've made the order, we're waiting for them to come in. So as soon as they come in, we're going to be putting those up.
So they're going to be flashing constantly during a certain time period?
Yes.
No push buttons?
No push button. Because they're only for the, they're on each end of the corridor for vehicles. So there's no way to really like sense we have like 4 intersections through there that we're looking at. So they're on the outer periphery. Now, when we do our ultimate improvements, we have found that the signs that you're talking about, where we have the active and we can push, that's when they would be installed with the bump outs. But we would need the constriction of the bump outs, which helps with the visibility of the signs and then demarcates to the vehicles, hey, again, I'm trying to walk here.
The proposed, I guess, bicycle striping at Iowa and Lincoln, would that be part of the HSIP process, or could we do that anyway?
We could do some of that. Now we did go ahead and modify the warning sign. It's there. I don't know if you folks saw that, but we added because there's that path that the U of I built on the west side, and we went on ahead and added some ped warning and bike warning signs there because Iowa is a bike route through there. So we did do that, and we have advanced warning signs there too.
Okay. Anything else for Craig? Yeah, Sue?
It seems this is just more evidence that signage doesn't change driver behavior. The conditions of the road and their perception of risk does. And I'm wondering if there's some way we can sort of cheaply and creatively create the illusion of bump outs,
right,
or something.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. At Matthews in Nevada, we're actually doing some of that. We worked with the U of I on the northeast corner to actually do a physical bump out. We were going to do just the stripe bump out, but we are going to do the stripe bump out on the northwest corner. So that'll be a kind of our unofficial pilot, and we'll see how that works. But we actually have striped out, and maybe I'll bring this forward to the commission and show you what we have done when we get done with everything. But we striped out a bump out there, and then we put a sign. Move the stop signs over.
Which intersection was that?
Matthews in Nevada.
Okay.
There's, is it an African American Studies building on the northeast corner that's being built?
Yeah, it's the Cultural Center, the Bruce Nesbitt African American Cultural Center.
Okay. And we worked in conjunction with Stacy DiLorenzo to took advantage of the fact that they had to do work with the sidewalk anyway. We had this design, And then we paid a portion of some of the sidewalk improvements that was beyond what they would have done anyway. So we have right now stop signs in there, but those are temporary just for the construction, and then we'll put in the stop here for peds signs when that construction's done. So in answer to your question, there is our first pilot with the bump out, and then we can try and see how that works. There we actually went with a fatter line than what we've normally done to try to make it more pronounced. Any other questions? Then?
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Craig.
Okay.
Do you need any recommendations or anything from us to go forward?
You could recommend to forward to the Traffic Commission.
Okay. Is there a motion to forward the results of the speed reduction study on Lincoln Avenue to the Traffic Commission?
I so move, especially with the idea of, you know, trying to find other ways to slow the speed down, since the signs themselves don't seem to work too well.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Jeff. Moved by Sue and Jeff seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I'll
Okay.
abstain. I'm a member of the Traffic Commission. So.
Yeah, member of the Traffic Commission shouldn't vote. Okay, that motion carries, and so that'll go to the Traffic Commission. Magically. I don't know how it works, but it'll happen.
Yeah.
Okay, announcements. Anyone have announcements? Yeah, Cynthia.
So I wanted to share that some information about what's been going on other places. The dockless bike share has withdrawn from quite a number of cities. I was just in Washington, D.C. this weekend. I didn't see a single dockless bike share bike, and when I was there in March, they were all over the place. Some of the big companies, OFA and Lime Bike, are pulling a lot of their dockless bike share bikes out because electric scooters have been much more successful and popular, and e-bikes as well. So our company, I'm thrilled to have them here, and the bikes are getting a lot of use, but it'll be interesting to see how our program progresses here. Our company is an American-based one, which has a different, hopefully a different financial model. A lot of the companies that threw the thousands of bike share bikes out there did not have any plan for sustainability. They had a lot of venture capital. So lots of people, including myself, were going, this is not sustainable. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens as this moves forward, because there never was a plan for how they were going to continue to operate it in terms of the financing. So I just thought I would share that information because it's very interesting, and the electric scooters have been in nearly every city I've been to recently. So a year from now, we'll see if they're still there. So we're having very rapid changes that are occurring with our transportation system and mobility options, and it's hard for communities to predict how that's going to happen and where it's going to happen. I am hopeful that our bike share program will be successful and continue and expand, but I thought I would share that information with everybody.
And I heard some preliminary numbers about number of rentals. I know we're supposed to get that information eventually. Is there anything official that we can repeat in public? Because that is something that I think kind of counters the argument that people are willing to put up with a little bit of bike litter if a bunch of people are benefiting.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I actually have the numbers with me tonight, but then I realized that it said confidential and proprietary. So I need to check the IGA and figure out what what we're actually allowed to share. It might just mean that this particular presentation is proprietary, so I can't share that. Yeah. So I'm not sure about the numbers. I will say I think they're very impressive. Bikes have been getting a lot of use compared to what I know about traditional bike share systems. So I think it's looking good, and I will find out
think
what I can share.
I think as a
and then
general
get
rule,
back
I've
to
heard
that.
that, not locally, but in general, if bike share companies can average one bike 3 times a day, they feel like that's doing pretty good. So I would guess it would be somewhere close to that. Morgan?
So I have permission. We can share that there were about 45,000 rides in the first month. Then they averaged 8 rides per bike, and they had nearly 8,000 different users.
Well, the 8 rides per bike was during the peak period, but for the whole month, I think it was 5.
Right.
But still, that's
once,
good.
Once they got all the 500 bikes out, then they started
Yeah.
averaging 8 per bike. That's what it was.
Okay.
But also,
Okay.
it was during the beautiful weather and the novelty, so that doesn't necessarily mean what it will be.
Okay.
But I got permission to say
Did
those
you say the
numbers.
number of users?
Just under 8,000.
Yeah. That seems
Okay.
like a lot.
So I was curious, did they do any like weird promotions, like a time when it was free? Because I was going home one time and like every block there was somebody else on one of those silly bikes.
I don't think they did that. I'm pretty sure that when you signed up, you got like 2 free rides, because I got $1 on my thing when I signed up. So
I have a question. What are the plans for winter? Are they going to keep the bikes out? Have they, you all, do we know what they're going to do?
no, we can ask them. And I had to miss the first meeting with the company because I was out that day. But
Okay.
I don't know if that was discussed, but I can find
Okay.
out.
Thanks.
Any other announcements?
I have one
Oh,
other
yeah,
question. If a
Nancy?
bike stays somewhere too long, does somebody come and get it from them, or?
Yeah, that's up to the company, unless of course it's parked in an improper parking space. But it's really up to the company. So I think if they see something that's been there for a few days, they're probably going to move it because, like Bill said, you want to get each bike a few rides a day if you can.
I'd like to share an announcement.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Every year there's a campus sustainability celebration, and this year it'll be on October 25. It is specifically about achievements made by the university for our climate action plan. It's October 25 from 4 to 6 p.m. in the Illini Union in room 314. And it's open to the public. Please come and check out what we're doing, including stuff about bikes and pedestrians.
Cool, thanks. Other announcements? Future topics. We have a few items listed. I wanted to add a couple things. I was thinking we could talk about expanded snow shoveling, or at least maybe go over the current snow shoveling requirements and what areas, which sidewalks those cover, and just get input from the commission to see if, and if staff has thought about expanding, just kind of get an update on anything going on with that. It seems like downtown's a little bit more active in the northern part now than it was when this was first set up, so maybe we could expand that to the north. The other thing I wanted to suggest would be to get information about how bicycle and pedestrian facilities are considered during subdivision platting process, and when developments are proposed and stuff, how that figures into our complete streets policy, what their requirements are besides providing bike parking if it's a apartment building or commercial development, just basically like flow plans and things like that, if there are requirements, and how they're held to that. So if somebody, that would just be kind of an informational thing. If somebody, if some staff member could provide that. I think for the snow shoveling, I could put together the map and some slides on that and do that. Then we have 4 other things: equity and education. Audrey, did you have something already kind of planned for that, or? Okay, Vision Zero is your other one.
When is that, Audrey? Okay, cool.
So next month is Vision Zero.
What she wants to do after that. might be December.
Oh, okay, you're going to Vision, I see.
Yeah, it's in New York City, right?
Oh, no, I was thinking of going to.
Oh, I thought you were going to the conference. I was like, ooh, all right, great.
Oh, okay. But you went to do the Vision Zero presentation first,
In November.
in November? Okay. That'll work for me. And the wayfinding plan, do you know how far off that?
I'm not sure if it will be ready in November. There's been some development now from RPC, and I know they're also working on the PED master plan, coming along with some stuff. So it's possible, but we'll know more here in a couple more weeks.
Okay. Yeah, probably the PED, would those come at the same time, do you think?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
It's always good if we can bring them once, since they're doing both. Regional Plan Commission's doing both.
Okay. So
There is some talk about, well, we'll be convening with the steering committee on the bike wayfinding plan first, and then there's talk about a public meeting at sometime in the next month, maybe, or so. But we'll announce that, and then when we do, then we'll send it out to the commission, so you
Okay.
folks are aware.
Any other future topics we should put on the radar? Annie?
I'd be curious about bike parking, like what, like, so for example, I biked to Walmart and their bike parking was bizarre, or like the red herring, there's not enough bike parking, or I bike past some houses on campus and they desperately need, like privately owned houses that have like 20 residents, they desperately need like bike parking. So I would just be curious to know, like, just sort of like, I'm just kind of curious, like, what the city of Urbana's thought process is on it. Do we have additional bike parking? I don't know. Does that make sense, the question?
Yeah, we
Okay.
we have zoning requirements for new construction. Yeah, nothing I know of that requires retrofits. And there's requirements like for residential properties, houses, you can't have it, supposedly you can't have it in the front yard. I think that's right. Does that sound right? Yeah, I don't know how well that's enforced, but
But that would
There's
that
some-
would be good to look at, because,
Yeah.
I mean, I bike past certain houses where I do see a bike rack in the front yard, or I see like 8 bikes like in the front yard, like attached to different objects, and it would just be nice if they just had a bike rack, and they could
Yeah.
people could lock their bikes. Obviously, they're safer in the backyard. Well, I don't know. I assume they're safer in the backyard. But I'm just more curious. I would actually just like to know, because like when I go to businesses, I would like to say,
This is the policy.
yeah, I would like to say this is,
imagine one thing that would help would just be like if Bike Project or other businesses could actually come up with a cost-effective way to go out and install relatively inexpensive parking for apartment buildings, because it would be a selling point for them, you'd think. And
that was kind of more that was sort of my approach. Was honestly one of the first thoughts I had when I moved here, and I saw all these bikes all willy-nilly in front of houses left and right, and I thought, well, this is crazy. Like, this should just be like a point of pride that this many people like to bike in this city, and we should figure out a way to like get bike parking that's uniform or standard, or I don't know, just anyway.
yeah. So how about if people are looking for something to Google late at night, they could do some research on inexpensive bike parking and
I've designed art bike racks and had them installed, but I don't know if that's, what we're...
That's a great idea. Let's explore options. I've mentioned it before.
what's that? What kind of racks?
I have mentioned before the idea of having art competition in which people design bike racks. They've done this in other communities, and it's been very successful. They did it in New York City. They've done it in a variety of places, and it's something that you can partner with the arts community on. Places like the Bike Project have almost no budget. We really need an incentive program for retrofitting existing businesses, but we need some funding from somewhere to offer to help match. And it's not expensive to put in bike parking, but there has to be an incentive. And we have good bike design guidelines that are required when people put new bike parking in. But when I go to a business and say, I'd like for you to put in bike parking, it's already an existing business, they inevitably, even though I give them the information on the current guidelines, they buy a really crummy bike rack that I don't want to use. And so if we had a program, we could say, if you contact these people, they have a bike rack, and it'll cost, you know, $100, and they can help you put it in and find the location. The other problem is the places they put them, because, you know, the existing businesses don't have to meet current requirements, and I think it's something I'd like to take a look at in our current bike guidelines in terms of location of bike parking, because sometimes businesses still manage to put it in a pretty bad location, and so then bikes are still chained up to various things in front of the entrance to the business. So those are things that I've mentioned before, and I'd really like to see our Arts Commission and some other people take a look at that, because I think it is, as Annie pointed out, something that the community could really use and would improve the attractiveness of the community.
Bill, I did do a ton of research on art bike racks and usefulness, and when I designed the one that is currently installed and being used. So, because I looked at it as a creative placemaking project. How would you identify that you're in a certain neighborhood or in a certain place? And so I looked at it as sculptural objects that you would be allowed to park a bike to. So we had different restrictions and ideas. I'm actually perfectly happy to talk about art bike racks, but I just don't know when I go to a business, I just don't know what to tell people. Like, I'm like, you should really get more, like, yeah. And then I've also been told that the city of Urbana does have additional bike racks that they can deploy. I don't know if this is a rumor or fake or real. I have no idea. So if we have more bike racks, let's deploy them. But I just don't know.
Okay, sounds like a future topic.
Sounds like a winter topic.
Also, you know, the Arts Commission is a public meeting, so if anyone from this commission wants to go speak as public input on the Arts Commission, that would always be welcome too.
Cool. And they have a budget.
They do. They have about $50,000 a year in grants. So. Anyone else? Okay, I think that's it. If there's no other business, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much.